Coriolanus is a decorated Roman soldier whose name is Caius Marcius at the beginning of the play. He is a war machine. He's monumentally arrogant and is contemptuous of the fickle mind of the mob.
It's a story about a man who is groomed for greatness and who is a great man, but does not make that transition from being a brilliant military leader into a brilliant politician. Coriolanus can't do that. He's too pure to himself, which you have to sort of admire, even though, in effect, he's a proto-fascist.
He believes that his martial prowess and his military distinction gives him the right to say whatever he wants. And the play is about one man hurtling towards his own destruction because of the obstinacy of his nature.
The Donmar is, I suppose, what you would call a found theatre space. So this room was actually a banana ripening warehouse. We're in Covent Garden, which is where the great fruit and vegetable market was, where My Fair Lady is set. I just love the idea that this building was not intended to be a theatre and yet has this extraordinary magic. It's a kind of deeply psychological space. It has to be enormously truthful. When people do Coriolanus, they've done it on the whole with a lot of pomp and ceremony. It's been done on quite a big scale with a lot of epic staging, and you get these kind of great slices of Rome and what people imagine Rome was like. You can't do that in here.
We started out with the notion of the arena, the Roman arena, and the idea of Coriolanus as a combatant in the middle of that arena. And we wanted to strip the space back as much as possible so that that was our real focus. So we looked at a kind of early Rome that was sort of full of danger, full of excitement, full of risk.
This is not the Rome that we're familiar with. It's not the Rome of I. Claudius or Julius Caesar. It's a very ancient place in which Rome is one of a number of warring city-states and has yet to become the predominant one.
There are no emperors, there is no Colosseum, there are no gladiators. And Italy, rather than being the playground of the Roman Empire, is a landmass of warring tribes.
The citizens are in uproar, they don't have enough bread, they don't have enough grain. And we wanted to get that across very, very strongly. So we started looking at both Roman walls and kind of Roman graffiti, and also looking at more contemporary kind of ways that people have used walls in terms of registering their protests and their kind of anger. They would often paint the sort of first few feet of their walls bright red, the idea being that they would keep the population in a state of kind of war and terror the whole time.
It's a warehouse, so it's within what was an ancient market. It's within one of the most ancient parts of London where people congregated every day. We're pretty close to Westminster, to the Houses of Parliament. There's a scene in Coriolanus in which there is a sort of fight that erupts within the Senate. We spent a lot of time looking at various parliaments and assemblies around the world, having fighting kick off in them.
It's amazing. In Japan or India, people have a fight, and chairs go everywhere, and there's lots of blood, and there's an amazing one, I think it might have been in Russia. A man is speaking, it's quite a boring speech, and a man just comes up to him with a gun and fires it in his face, but it doesn't go off. And then there's an amazing moment of shocked silence, and then everyone just goes, whoa, and piles on. And when we do the Senate scene where everything kicks off, there's often a sense at the end of it that everyone's just gazing about going, how did that happen? 5 minutes ago it was fine.
I play a character called Volumnia, who is the mother of Coriolanus, and she focuses all her love and attention, which is considerable, on her only son. She absolutely adores him, and she sees it as his duty not only to become a warrior, but to become a consul and a leader of Rome.
He comes back from the war covered in scars, and it makes her giddy with pleasure. One of her lines, she says, "Blood more becomes a man than guilt his trophy." You know, she takes physical pleasure in the blood he sheds for Rome.
Amongst all of Shakespeare's writing, it's probably the play that is the most visceral, that talks most about the belly, the wounds, cuts, gashes, blood. There's this incredibly rich poetical life to it.
Everybody talks about this beautiful body and also all the scars that appear on it.
He has to show them to the... His body is public property, in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Volumnia thinks much more of the potential office he obtained from doing this, whereas Virgilia, my character, thinks of him as the man, her husband, and she is concerned about, him getting killed, which is, not an unreasonable concern to have with someone in a war.
I wanted to work with Big Edith because I'd seen her work on television. Borgen, the series that has come over here from Denmark, is one of the great pieces of television I've seen in the past few years. She plays, through the first two series, a journalist, and in the third series, the political advisor to the woman who is the Prime Minister of Denmark.
There are a lot of parallels to be drawn between Borgen and Coriolanus, because there's such a fatigue of politicians, I think, also in Denmark now, and people feel like nobody speaks their minds. That's one thing you can say about Marsh, is he does speak his mind.
Coriolanus says whatever comes into his head. He believes that there is a class of people who are born to rule, and that he comes from that class, and that, his terms for the people are extremely contemptuous. He says that they stink. He calls them measles.
If you believe in democracy, as I do, it's very hard to stomach the things he says, because he holds the people in such deep contempt. But at the same time, he's so pure-hearted and so honest that there is something admirable about his purity.
You imagine you want to side with the people, but they actually behave rather disgracefully towards the man who saved them. So it's difficult to know where to put your sympathy. It's probably always timely, but I'm very interested in the rise of fascism, and it keeps coming back. And it's sort of coming up all around the world just when you think it's gone again. And to me, Coriolanus has that quality, which makes him both extremely attractive, but also terribly dangerous.